Welcome to How to Become an Appium Desktop Ninja. My name is Wim Selles and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at Sauce Labs. And this video is part of a series of 6 videos where we look into what you need to know to become that Appium Desktop Ninja. In this video we're going to look into some hidden features that will bring us a step further in becoming that Appium Desktop Ninja. As you can see, I already started an Appium Desktop session and an Android emulator and iOS simulator. What we're going to do now is we're going to look into finding elements. And let me already start my server and start 2 sessions. A session with an Android simulator and an Android emulator with the same application. Let me just divide the windows on my screen. The bottom version will be the one for the local simulator and the top version will be the one for the local emulator. Let me make that screen a little bit bigger for iOS. And for iOS, when it is loaded, I also want to have the correct screen that I want to use. In this case, the back to product screen, and also make sure that Android is showing the correct screen. What we can do when we need to start our automation is we need to figure out which selector we want to use. And in this case, I want to use the back to products button. So let me expand the tree here, click on this specific button and go to the location in the tree which I can use. As you can see here, we've got 3 different elements, and those elements can be all searched with different types of locator strategies. And as you can see, I just want to have this one because this is the specific button, and on the right you will then have 4 unique selectors in finding your element. You can even click on the timing and you would now see if I would use this selector, then even the accessibility ID is the fastest one to figure out where that specific button in our screen is. But when you are in a situation where it's a little bit harder, or you created your script and you figured out that it's not clicking on this button, you might want to run it and run it again, but that will take some time. You can also use Appium Desktop for that. You can use Appium Desktop by clicking on the search elements button here, and then a new window will pop up. You can choose a locator strategy here, and I'm going to use the predicate string for today just to show you what could happen if you're not providing the proper selector. And in this case, if I would just provide label is back to products, you might think that I would just hit the button and are able to connect to it. But as you can see now, I got 3 elements. I have the parent container, as you can see it highlighted in the left part. I have a child container, and in the end I also have the button itself. But if I now use this selector, and if I would now click on this button, there might be a situation that the clicking is not happening. And this will result in a flaky test. And the reason for this is that it will find the button, but in an array of 3, and it will be the last part. It will be the last element in that array. If you're using your selector, you need to make it more accurate, because like Selenium, Appium, if it will get back 3 elements, it will use the first element from that element array. So we need to make this more accurate, and we can already cheat a little bit because we have the locator here on the right. So let's start cheating and see if I'm a good cheater and see if we type in the selector properly. It needs to be name is and then say test and then back to products. This should be the correct selector. This should prove that I can cheat. If I would now click on search, you would see that you will only get back 1 element. So the search for element feature can help you figure out which selector you need to use to get back that one specific element you need to use to click. So hopefully you can use this without running your script all the time, saving you some time with the element selection. Now I want to dive into how to execute a certain gesture. And with a certain gesture I mean, for example, scrolling down or scrolling up. And like I already mentioned, and let I just take Android now as an example, if I would make this a little bit bigger, I would focus on Android. You have the option on Android just to do a scroll like this. You can use the button here, say this is the starting point, this will be my ending point, and it will automatically scroll for you. And now you can verify if you see, for example, that 1C or if you don't see it. Now let me just scroll back to the top of the page and also refresh the source. Because there's also a different feature that I wanted to show you. A different feature that is a selector. You can use certain selectors with Android that will search for an element and automatically scroll for you. And this is something that I learned from a customer of us. His name was Federico, and he asked me, is this also a nice way to verify if an element is there and click on that element? And I was like, yeah, this is pretty nice. Nice that you're sharing this with me, because with one selector, instead of verifying if the element is there, you can automatically let Android search for that element and scroll it into the view for you. And then you can click on that certain element. And the selector we're going to use for that is the UI selector. This is basically a piece of Java which we're injecting into Appium, and Appium will translate that into one of the selectors it could use. The only thing we need to use is we need to be sure that we're on the UI Automator 2 driver. And this is basically the default driver for Appium together with Android. And then we can use the button here, the search for elements. We can go to locator strategy, scroll a little bit down, and there you would see UI Automator selector. And what we want to do is we want to search for the 1C. And if you might remember from one of our previous sessions, the 1C is not in the view, so the Android driver is not giving us back that element. So basically I cannot find that element now. But to find it, I need to scroll. With the UI selector, you can create a string like this. And let me make this a little bit larger. You can say something like new UI scrollable. And then in that scrollable, you would say use a specific element with the text, for example, Sauce Labs 1C, and automatically scroll to that element and stop scrolling until you found that element. And if I would now click on search, this string will be injected into the Appium driver, and as you can see, it will now automatically scroll, and it now found the element. It found the element which I can use. And this is something what we could use also in our automation script. Because now, because the element is visible, we have the element ID. I can now tap on the element, which will result in going to this specific page. So thanks Federico also for sharing this with us, that you can create your own selectors, that you could use a little bit of Java together with the UI selector, inject it into Appium, and Appium will do some more awesome stuff for you. So let us now stop this, click on cancel. Let's get back also to the product screen, put it also to the original situation, and click on the refresh button. You might now be wondering, can I also do this automatic scrolling with iOS? Well, yes and no. First of all, there is no specific selector for iOS to help you do the automatic scrolling. But they also have some awesome options to scroll to certain elements or to automatically create a scroll. Let us just go to iOS and let me just first show you one of the features that not a lot of people are aware of. And one of those features in Appium Desktop is the Actions tab. And with the Actions tab, you can execute certain actions on the device, on a session, on the web, or even on the context. And let us first take a look at the context, and I will get back to the gesture in a few minutes. Let us first go to the context. We could ask the context by selecting context, and we could verify what is the current context that we are in. Do we have a native app context? Yes, we have it. We're now in the native app context. We can also ask the iOS driver here, can you give me back all the current context or all the context? In this case, it will only give us back the native context because there is no extra context. But if you would automate a hybrid application, you would get back native app and you would get one or multiple web views. And if you even want to switch between those contexts, imagine we already had a hybrid application context here. We could get all the context. If we have the web view, select that web view, copy that string, put it in here, execute the action, and Appium Desktop will automatically reset the context and it will give you back the web view context. But there are some more actions. We can also go to, for example, the web. If we're using a Safari or a Chrome browser, we can look into the navigation and we can easily enter a URL, get a URL, even go back in a certain situation, go forward or even refresh the browser. It will not work now because we're using a native application, but if you would use maybe even a web view and you switch to the web view, you're able to use this navigation from the web. Then we also have some session options, basically telling the Appium server to change certain things. And this is something that I'm going to cover also in a few minutes. But I want to get back to the device because I mentioned that we want to execute certain actions. And especially we want to execute a mobile action. So let us now dive into the execute mobile because that's one of the actions you can execute on your current session. So if we would now click on execute mobile, you will get a command or a button. And with that button, you can provide a command and also a JSON argument. And you might now wonder, yeah, but what can I do with mobile or execute mobile? Well, to explain that, we first need to open Safari browser. We need to go to the Appium documentation and especially search for mobile commands. And if we done that, we get into this page. And in this page, you will find all the commands you could use that could make your life a little bit easier. As you can see, we've got swipes, we've got scrolls, we've got pinches, we've got zooms, we've got whatever we want to use. But be aware of the fact that there is a difference in what the iOS driver supports and also what the Appium driver for Android is supporting. For example, if we would now look into the scroll, we have a scroll here, but that's the only thing we could use. There are no other options for gestures. But I can already mention now that with Appium 1.19, we will get almost the same options, swiping, scrolling, pinching, tapping, flinging with Android. This has been built by Mikola, one of the core contributors also to Appium, and you already saw it in one of our first presentations. And he created that, and when Appium 1.19 is released, you also will have those options with Appium Desktop. But if you also looked into one of our previous sessions, you also saw that you can use Appium Desktop with a newer version of Appium by just connecting to a different server. So you can even try it out now, even though it's not in Appium Desktop yet. But having said enough, let's look at the scroll. I want to do a scroll, so I click on the link, and here the Appium documentation explains me what I need to do. I can provide an element, I can provide the direction, but I just want to make it very easy. I just want to do a simple scroll down, and I also want to do a scroll up. So you might wonder, how can I do that? Well, let's get back to this one. Here I need to say mobile and then scroll. Then I need to provide JSON, but be aware that you need to provide proper JSON. So you need to use double quotes. And in this case, I would say direction, and after the direction, a colon, and then say down. If I would use this command and would inject this to the Appium server, it will now, as you can see, automatically scroll down. If I want to see this also being reflected in Appium Desktop, I need to refresh the source, because the mobile execute command, or all the actions you are executing here, do not trigger a refresh of the source. But let us execute it again, and let's say a mobile, and then again say scroll, and then use the direction, and the direction in this case needs to be up. I want to scroll up again, and as you can see, Appium Desktop will scroll up for you. It triggered Appium to execute the scroll on the device. But this is not everything. We also can do, for example, a pinch. And let us just take a look at this screen, refresh the source, and if we would now look at the image, you can already see there's an icon which mentions that you can do pinching and zooming. Zooming in or making it a little bit smaller. And if we want to use this with Appium Desktop and also with the mobile command, I need to use the command mobile.pinch. And there I have the option to also provide the scale. If I want to make it bigger, I can also use the velocity. And the only thing I need to tell is which element do I want to use to execute this pinch. So I need to go to the source. I need to select my element, and here you can already see the element. So I can copy the element ID. I already prepared the command, so I will show you that later on. And let me just inject the ID here. I go to actions again. I go to execute mobile. I say execute. Then I would say, mobile, and then pinch. From mobile pinch, I provide a JSON blob, a JSON string in this case, which would say the scale. I want to go and resize it at least with 1.5. The velocity is how fast do I want to execute this one. If the scale is higher than 1, it needs to be a velocity also higher than 1. If the scale is lower than 1, the velocity also needs to be lower than 1. And then I provided the element ID. If I would now execute the action, you would see that Appium is now pinch or zooming out the image. So this is also a way you could use Appium Desktop to execute certain gestures, pinching and zooming in this case. But like I mentioned, this is also something which will be available in in Appium 1.19 when it's going to be released inside of Appium Desktop, or when you already use Appium, the latest version of Appium, or maybe even in the release candidate, you can already use it. This is just a way how to verify if the command you want to execute with Appium is working like it should, or a way for you to do manual interactions with Appium Desktop on a device. I said that I also wanted to get back to changing stuff on the Appium server with the Actions tab, and also change maybe some settings. And let's use Android for that one. Let's take a look at the Actions tab for Android. Let's now go to the session, and in the bottom you would see the settings. And with the settings option, you have the ability to update settings on the Appium server, which might change the behavior of the Appium server and maybe even the elements for example, Android, it might return. And we can already get the current settings, so we can click on Get Device Settings, and now you would see a very long command here with all the options that the Appium server already has set for us. And if you want to know those default options, you can go to the Appium documentation. So let's open Safari browser. Let's go to Advanced. Let's go to the Settings API. And in the Settings API, you can see all general settings. You can see only Android settings, and you can also see iOS settings. And one of the settings, for example, for iOS is that you can change the default screenshot quality. If you want to have a higher resolution, you can use the Settings API. Tell the Appium server that if it returns a screenshot, it needs to be an awesome screenshot instead of a very low resolution screenshot. By default, you can already read it, it has been set to 1. Play with it, try to create a screenshot and see if you see a difference. But what I wanted to show you today with the Settings API is that we can also change the behavior of the elements that are given back by the Android UI Automator 2 driver to Appium. And we've got an option here which is called the Allow Invisible Elements. By default it is false, and this means that Android will basically give you back the elements that it thinks that should be the best ones to give back. Let's just say it like that. If we would go back to the source, and if we would now just refresh the source, then you only have that limited set of elements, but you don't have, for example, the bar here at the top, the notification bar. You don't have the button bar. And we can change that behavior. If you want to know which elements you can also get back, we go to Actions again. We go to Session, to Settings, click on Update Settings. And what we need to do here is we need to provide a JSON string or JSON blob, just how you want to call it. In this case, it needs to be valid, and we say the value true. If I would execute this action, and if it was successful, I'm not seeing any changes. If I want to see that changes, I need to go to source, and I also need to refresh my source. And now take a good look at the source. Let me just expand what I already have here so we can really see the difference, that we don't have a lot of information on our screen. If I would now refresh the source, then the source tree itself will also change. And it will also give you back the elements which are not visible. In this case, it was the menu. We have the menu here. We have all the items that are not visible now. They are still in the source. But it's not only the menu. We can also now get back at least the status bar, and we can also get back the navigation bar background. This might help you in your automation. So for Android, you could easily update the settings of the Appium server and also change the behavior of the Appium server in returning the elements that are maybe hidden. But like I said, there are more options, and I would advise you to play with those options. Now that we covered a lot of topics, basically all the topics you see here that will lead you to become that Appium Desktop ninja, there's only one thing I wanted to say to you. Becoming a ninja is one, but staying a ninja means you keep practicing. And for Appium Desktop, this means that you need to keep exploring. Look into the documentation. Try out all the options that I've shown you for the mobile commands or for the settings. And if you found new ways in how to use Appium or Appium Desktop, try to spread the word. Help your fellow ninjas to become better, and in this way help contributing to Appium, Appium Desktop and the Appium community. For now, I want to thank you for watching this and maybe all the videos, and hope to see you soon.